we've been exploring together the subject of transformation and looking specifically at some of the paths to transformation. I think the detours that God, life, spirit throws in our way certainly can be a path to transformation. I believe that vision, inspired vision, that thing that keeps bubbling up from deep inside one's soul, certainly can provide a path to transformation. And I also think that pain can provide a very significant path to transformation, a path that forces us to awaken and to look, to be able to deal with it and heal from it so we can, in fact, move on. The pain that life, that God, that spirit uses to wake us up, that's what I want to talk about today. We all have or will experience pain. So it's not a matter or a question of whether it will arrive. It will arrive. I rather suspect that every one of us in this room has dealt with significant experiences of pain in our lives, and perhaps we're dealing with that right now. Pain can be a messenger, an important messenger. We know on the physical level that pain in the body is a messenger that something, that something needs our attention. Something needs our attention. But that is also true, not just with the physical pain of the body, but the pain of the heart, the pain of the soul, the pain of the mind. It's very human nature to resist pain, to push away from pain, to try to make it go away by either avoiding it or resisting it. But that doesn't usually work very well. We have an expression in metaphysics that what we resist persists, that when we are resisting the pain, we actually have a tendency to amplify the pain. So the very counterintuitive act of leaning into the pain is often the very thing that will help begin the process of healing from the pain itself. And when pain arises in our life because of a situation or an incident that has happened, it can also be trying to reveal to us patterns that we need to take a look at. So one of the ways that we can approach pain that can be more beneficial to us rather than resisting it or retreating from it or hiding from it would be to view it differently, to begin to see pain not as the enemy, but as a messenger. And to ask of ourselves, what is it that this pain that I'm feeling in my heart, in my soul, in my life experience, what is this pain trying to reveal to me? What is its message? What is its gift? Like Jacob in the Old Testament wrestling with the angel, I will not let you go until you bless me. What he was saying mystically, metaphysically is until I understand what this is about, I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to lean into it and work with it until I understand what it is and am not just understanding what it is, but blessed by it. In other words, taking out of it some blessing, some gift. Today I'm going to share a little bit with you about my personal journey of pain. It's not only one thing in my life that has been a painful thing, but I'll share one in particular that I think many people, especially women, can relate to, and very much a catalyst for tremendous growth for me and tremendous healing and insight for me. And the pain that I want to share with you has to do with my own issues as a very young woman of eating disorder and of body image work. But though mine kind of circles around that, the truth of the matter is that pain as a messenger can be approached no matter what the pain is, what the cause of the pain is, the way that we approach it, the way that we can work with it to reap that blessing, to understand that lesson is fundamentally the same. So whether Your pain may be a pain of a certain kind of addiction to certain food or drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or vaping or whatever it may be, whether it's a pain of addiction or maybe pain that you're dealing with on an emotional level from a betrayal of somebody close to you, or perhaps pain from some sort of physical or sexual trauma, or pain from estrangement, whatever the precipitating event or cause, the way of working with it is really very much the same, very much the same. My personal struggle began during a time of significant change in my life. I was in ministerial school, and John and I had just married, so for the first time. That's a whole other story. Some of you know it, some of you don't, but married him for the first time. And so it's a time of significant change for me and newfound independence, but also a time of wrestling with some demons, if you will, that had lingered from my ice skating days. I struggled, as many young women do, and middle-aged women as well, with body image. And part of it resulted from my experience skating. You were expected to be a certain shape and a certain size. And in fact, for those of us who skated with the show, when you signed a contract to skate with a professional show, they weighed you at the start of your contract, and then they would do spot weight every once in a while throughout the week to make sure that you stayed within a range of no more than 5 pounds. They didn't mind if you go on the underside so much, but if you went on the upside. And that was in part because of the image that they wanted all of the women to portray, but also an economic situation. Tiny as those little costumes were, they were very expensive, and they were made to fit each skater's body, and they wanted to make sure that you could stay in that. And so even though I was in ministerial school, newly married, I was still struggling with that. So much so that I had a lot of self-hatred. I would look at my body and not like it, and that caused me to fixate on it. And it caused me to put myself on a really strict diet. So much so that I dropped to just over 90 pounds. So borderline anorexic, and then started to overeat and then hide food, look like I was eating normally in public, and then, grab the potato chips or whatever it was that I was into that I was eating. And then all of the shame of that. So anyone who's ever done something that they have felt shame around, I can understand that. Trying to be a certain way externally, dealing with all of these feelings of not liking me and what I was doing to myself and all of that. Meanwhile, in ministerial school and a newlywed, and trying to figure all of this out and trying to figure out, well, how do I deal with this spiritually? How do I deal with this from a healthy point of view? What is this all about? Still trying to deal with ministerial school, still trying to deal with being newlywed. And eventually the pain became so great. Can you relate to that somewhere in your life where you're doing something or the circumstances in your life are so painful that suddenly, in AA, they call it hitting rock bottom, right? So painful that you gotta do something about it. Nod your head if you know what I'm talking about. Some of you do, some of you don't? Okay. Well, believe me, you can get to a point where the pain or the self-hatred and loathing and upset is so great that you are desperately committed to finding a path to healing. And my path to healing resulted as I started to look at what was the dieting all about? What was the overeating, undereating, body image craziness all about? It was about the need to conform. That's understandable, right? Since I had signed a contract that I had to be a certain way, so that part's kind of understandable. But the societal need to conform, was I going to be the way that society said I should be? Was I going to look the way society said I should look? low self-esteem. Can any of you relate to that? And don't ever be fooled. You can look at somebody that to you looks like they have it together, or that they should feel happy and strong and confident, but you never know what that person's dealing with where. On the inside, what their self-talk is, what they are feeling. So my struggles revealed very clearly this need, this unhealthy need that I had to conform, very low levels of self-esteem, complete lack of self-acceptance, the fear of vulnerability, the fear of really being who I am. And so sometimes we hide behind addictive behaviors or addictive substances. And what I eventually started to learn was that there was no way I was going to be able to control this, that I had to first do something that was incredibly difficult for me, and maybe you can relate to this, and that was I had to surrender. I had to surrender. I had to surrender and admit that I couldn't fix this all on my own, that I needed the help, the true help of a higher power and presence. That higher power and presence, that I had to open myself to be vulnerable to accept I couldn't do it on my own, that even my very best thinking and my very best ability to plan things out and organize and use willpower, that it wasn't going to last, that every time I would let go of the willpower, what would happen? Go right back to where it was before. Does this make sense? And so the hardest thing was that first step to surrender, to say, I can't do this on my own. I can't do it the way I was doing it before. I have to trust in something stronger, greater, more powerful in me on a personal level. And for me, that was God. For me, that was spirit. And then the next hardest piece was the self-acceptance piece of having to first accept myself exactly where I was, as I was, genuinely, before doing anything to try to make some changes. That the changes had to come not out of self-loathing, but the changes had to come from a healthy self-acceptance, a gentle self-acceptance. It's why you will often hear me in my teachings directly or through between the lines talk about the importance of a gentle approach to oneself, to dropping the judgment, to dropping the forcefulness to try to make oneself be a certain way, but to rather love oneself into that place of wholeness. And then I had to work with the idea of observation and inquiry. I had to really ask, what is this pain really trying to reveal to me? What is its message to me? And I can't tell you how many pages of journaling I did as I tried to peel that back for myself. Whatever pain you might be experiencing in your life, whether it's betrayal, whether it's addiction, whether it's a loss of love, loss of opportunity, whatever that pain is, what is its deeper message for you? And can you be compassionate with yourself as you ask these questions, as you look at yourself lovingly? It was a great eye-opener for me when I realized the way that I would talk to myself about myself is not how I would ever talk to somebody I cared about. I would never talk to somebody I cared about the way that I was talking to myself. And all that shameful, harsh talking didn't get the change that I longed to get. It only came as I began to loosen that and find a place to accept the reality of where I was, accept the shame of kind of the stupid changes, embarrassing things I was doing, being honest about that, and then having the courage to love myself through to the other side. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? a holistic approach to our dealing with any sort of mental or emotional pain needs to be not just one thing, but I think we need to take it in a holistic way. I think about Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder of Unity, as I say that. If you know her story, you know that in her 40s, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis and given just 6 months to live. She was a mother and married, desperate to be alive and vibrant for her husband and for her children. And so she began a journey that was a very holistic journey of healing, not just her body, but healing her mind and her heart in the way that she looked at herself. Because in Myrtle's case, she had been raised to think of herself as weak and frail and likely to inherit sickness and never to be a very strong, vibrant force in the world. And so her holistic approach, if you will, to deal with her healing, to deal with the pain, was both physical, emotional, and mental. On a physical level, she worked at holding her body with love and light. She began to think about herself in a new and different way. That's so important for us in our healing of any kind of pain, to nurture ourselves physically, but to also then look at what is it that we are thinking? What is it that we keep affirming into existence in our life? For Myrtle, what she kept affirming into existence in her life until she knew otherwise was that she was weak and frail. And guess what? She got to prove that to be true until she started to hold a very different thought about herself, that she was a child of God, child of the infinite, and began to hold in mind and heart a very different image of herself. And so as she began to do these things, she began to change from the inside out. The pain started to be healed on both an emotional, mental, and physical level. So pain, if we look at it as a way of being awakened to deeper dimensions of ourself, we will approach the pain differently. I'm not suggesting that we should ever say, oh gosh, I'm so glad I hurt right now. I'm not suggesting anything as silly as that, but I am suggesting that we can have a healthy approach to pain. And that healthier approach to pain could be when we look at pain as a messenger trying to get our attention, trying to wake us up, but to wake us up not to slap us in the face and punish us, but to wake us up to greater good that is present for us. What is that pain trying to reveal to us? Is there a capacity we have that we never knew that we had? Is there a way of being that we are uniquely suited to express that we never knew we had because we were hiding or retreating in this pain? Let me share with you a process, 5 things that can be helpful in moving through pain. I've touched upon them in a little bit, but I want to really bring them into sharper focus. First is acceptance and surrender. I think that is probably the most important and probably the hardest step, the first one, acceptance and surrender. When I used to do biofeedback training for meditation practice, but also to help those who suffered from migraine headaches. Biofeedback, we would use electro and cardiograph, all different kinds of devices to measure galvanic skin response, brainwave activity, temperature, and so forth. And in using biofeedback to help people monitor their pain and deal with the pain of their migraines, part of the process and technique was to actually lean into the pain, to stop resisting it, to actually be with the pain and allow it to be there on its own without the added layer of resistance. So it's the idea of acceptance. It's the idea of surrendering. And again, surrendering not meaning giving up, not believing it's not ever going to get better. It can get better. but resisting it tends to prolong the healing or the alleviation of the pain more than helping it. So acceptance and surrender. It's the idea that we can allow the pain to exist. We can allow the eating disorder to exist. We can allow the addiction to exist. In other words, we are acknowledging that it is so for now. Hear the words, for now. Say them with me. For now. What does that imply? It implies for now, but it also implies doesn't always have to be that way, right? That's the important part. Acceptance is, for now, this is what it looks like. But I also know that it doesn't have to remain this way. The second has to do with self-reflection and introspection. Asking yourself, what is the pain trying to teach me? What is the pain trying to show me? Have I not been taking care of myself? Have I not been practicing self-care? Have I not allowed myself to be who I really am, not what people think I should be? I don't know what the answer to your question is. You may or may not know it right now, but I rather doubt you'll get it if you don't ask a good question about it. What is the pain trying to teach me? Where do I feel this pain in my body? Those in the alternative healing arts, those who are masseuses or do treatments like Reiki and healing touch and some of these other beneficial healing modalities, often speak about being able to recognize in another where there is blockage in the body. And where that blockage is the seat of pain. It's like it's being stored in the body, the emotional trauma or the emotional pain. And I think that sometimes we can get at where that is by meditation, by asking gently and quietly in meditation, where do I feel this in my body and what is this trying to share with me? What is it trying to tell me? And as you've heard me say many, many times when we do, for example, our burning bowl service and we do the white stones, I say, don't try to figure out the answer. That's not the level at which this is most effective. The level at which this kind of inquiry and self-introspection is most effective is not at the mental level, but at the soul level, at the receiving level. Does that make sense? So it's not trying to think, where does this pain fit in my body? What is this pain trying to tell me? It's not a mental exercise. It's a welcoming and opening into what your soul, what your higher self is trying to reveal to you. The third is compassion and self-love. Compassion and self-love. Nod your head if any of you have a little bit of difficulty with that, the self-love part. That the compassion, let me ask you this, when you think of compassion, do you usually think of someone else or do you think of yourself? Most of you said someone else. I notice that's true for me too. Now, I'm not suggesting stop thinking about other people. I think it's important to think about other people and to care about other people and to have compassion and empathy. But I notice in myself, when I think of compassion, I almost entirely think about it of me directing it outward towards someone or something else. I don't want to turn that off. But what I know I need to turn up a bit, and maybe you do too as well, is a compassion towards self. It's why, I believe this is why in the metta meditation practices, where it's a similar prayer to the one that we use, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be free of pain and suffering, may I know the comfort and ease of well-being, may my heart be at peace. Reason it suggests that we start with ourself and then radiate outward is the same reason that the stewardess says, put your oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on your loved one, right? What is that about? It's about we do really have to care for ourselves. We do have to take care of ourselves so we can be there to do the work that we want to do for others as well. The fourth is finding the transformative lesson in it. There is a transformative lesson in there. I don't know what it is for you, but your job is to find out what it is for you. Be like Jacob wrestling with that angel. I won't let you go until you tell me what it's about. Play with it. Ask it to tell you what it's about, and be patient. Be patient. It may take a while before you get the answer, and it could be that you get an answer at first that doesn't seem to make any sense. Just because it doesn't make any sense, don't discount it automatically. Play with it for a while, journal about it for a while. It may very well reveal to you something that is exactly what you need to know. And then the last is integrating it with action. And I think the action is spiritual action. I think the action is energizing our faith and trust. I'm sure that every time that Myrtle sat down and did her prayer work, her affirmation work, her visualization work, her self-forgiveness work, that she had the faith that that was going to work, that somehow, some way she was going to heal herself. And I think that we need to have that for ourselves as well. When we are dealing with pain in our life, betrayal, trauma, addiction, shame, abuse, whatever it may be, yes, we need to accept what it is for now. Yes, we need to ask what its messages are, what its learning is, but we also have to have the faith that somehow we will get through it. And not only will we get through it, but we will be better and stronger because of it. Do you believe that? I'm going to ask you again. Do you really believe that? Can you believe that for somebody else? I bet you absolutely can. I bet you absolutely can. Believe it for yourself as much as you believe it for another. Namaste.